Good midnight, night owls. You're listening to Midnight FM, where the wind keeps secrets and the dead sometimes listen back. I'm your host, RJ Jacob, and tonight we're heading into the Appalachian fog with a story from Grandpa Mr. Joseph. He says there's a place where a lantern still burns in a mine that collapsed a century ago, and that its light is red because it remembers blood. Grandpa Joseph is with me in the studio, ready to take us there. Grandpa, the mic is yours. Tell them about Hollow Brook and that bleeding light.
Thank you, Jacob, and good midnight to those who still believe the earth can breathe. You ever hear a mountain sigh, boy? You might think it's wind, but sometimes it's the ground remembering what it swallowed. Hollow Brook was like that, a mining camp tucked between two ridges and a river that ran black with iron. My father worked there when I was a child. He used to come home with coal dust in his pores and stories in his lungs. But the one he never told aloud was about the night the mine collapsed. They said a spark caught a pocket of gas and the tunnels folded like paper. 30 men buried alive. The foreman, Elias Crane, was the last to go down trying to drag them out. They found him 3 days later, sitting upright, his hand still on his lantern. And that lantern, it was still burning. No oil, no flame, just red light, slow and thick, as if the glass had filled with blood that glowed from within. The company sealed the mine and left it to the mountain. But the people stayed. They said every few years, on a fog night, that same red glow returned by the entrance, dripping from a broken hook like a heartbeat with light. When I was 20, a new contractor came in to reopen the old site. Money had a way of burying fear back then. I was hired to carry supplies, sweep out rats, and keep the new foreman's coffee hot. By the second week, men were already quitting. They said the air down there was too warm, too alive, like it was breathing with them. One night after shift, I stayed behind to stack tools. That's when I saw it. A glow, faint and red where the shaft was sealed off. I thought it was a generator spark until it moved. Up and down, side to side, like a hand swinging a lantern slowly in the dark. I called out. No answer. The light kept coming closer till it reached the barricade, and then I smelt it. Iron and wax and something sweet like rotting fruit. The red drops hit the ground and didn't cool. They sizzled, burning small holes in the dust. I ran to tell the foreman. He laughed, said it was phosphor or maybe kids with paint. 2 nights later, he was found dead by the entrance. Lantern still burning beside him. His hands black as coal, though the lamps were cold. They closed the mine again before morning.
But you can't close what the mountain has already opened. For months after, people saw the light moving through the fog, floating low like it was searching for something it had lost. Some said if you followed it, you'd find your way home no matter how far you'd wandered. Others said it was bait. A man named Leary tested that theory. Drunk on rum and daring, he walked into the fog with a pickaxe and a smile. The villagers heard him singing, then heard him coughing, then nothing. They found him 3 days later, half buried in the creek bed, lungs full of mud, eyes open and red as the lantern light. He had no heartbeat left, but his lips were moving, forming a word no one understood. After that, folks started calling it the Bleeding Lantern. Years passed. The mine sank deeper into the mountain's memory, and so did we. Then, in the winter of '79, word spread that a boy had gone missing near the old path. He'd gone looking for his dog at dusk and never came back. The search party found tracks leading to the ridge. Dog prints first, then boot prints, then nothing. When they looked up, they saw a red glow farther up the trail, bright as a signal flare. One of the men said it was just sunset light caught in fog, but the sun had set an hour ago. They climbed, found the boy standing on a ledge, staring into a hole in the ground. When they called his name, he turned and said, "He's calling them back." Then the ground collapsed. The hole wasn't a hole anymore. It was an entrance, and down below they saw lanterns, dozens of them, all bleeding the same slow red light. I was there the next day. They'd roped off the site, but curiosity is a disease I never learned to cure. When night fell, I went back with a lamp and a camera. The air was thick with mist that tasted of metal. Every few steps, I heard drips that weren't rain. When I shone my light on the rocks, I saw tiny red dots soaking through the stone like sweat. At the mouth of the mine, my lamp flickered out, but I didn't need it, because something else was shining back at me. The bleeding lantern. It hung just inside, swinging slow, casting a circle of red that moved like water. Each drop that fell from its rim hit the floor with a sound like a heartbeat. I stepped closer, and the light brightened, as if recognizing me. Then a voice came from the dark behind it. "You brought it back." I froze. Couldn't see anyone. The voice sounded like it was coming through stone and time together. It said, "We're still digging. Come help finish the shift." The lantern flickered, and I saw shapes, men half buried in rock, their eyes glowing the same red as the light. They weren't ghosts, they were reflections of something still working beneath the mountain. Then everything went dark.
When I woke, I was outside by the stream. My lamp was gone. My hands were black with dust. And in the mud next to me lay 30 small holes filled with wax, each one still warm. That's when I understood.
The lantern wasn't looking for help. It was looking for witnesses. You'd think a sane man would have left that place to rot after what happened, wouldn't you? I tried. I moved 2 towns over, worked odd jobs, built fences, fixed roofs, anything to keep my hands busy. But the trouble with certain memories is that they keep finding you in the dark, like they've got your address written on smoke. For years, I'd hear things, a drip, slow and steady, echoing through my dreams. Some nights I'd wake up with the smell of iron in my nose, sharp, clean, and wrong. And then one winter, I got a letter. No sender's name, no return address. Inside was a folded map, hand-drawn, old and torn. The only word on it was written in red pencil, "Return," and marked on it was the Hollow Brook mine. I burned that map in my stove. The ashes fell to nothing. But the next morning when I stepped outside, I found those same ashes in my front yard, arranged in the shape of a lantern. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I packed a lantern of my own, a thermos of coffee, and something I hadn't touched in years, my father's rosary. I told myself it was to prove I wasn't scared anymore. But really, it was the rope again, invisible this time, pulling me back toward the place that had never finished speaking. The road to Hollow Brook was almost gone by then. Trees had eaten most of it. Snow sat heavy on the branches, and every crunch of my boots sounded like a heartbeat. When I reached the ridge, I saw fog rising from the ground, thick, pale, alive. The mine's entrance was there, just as I remembered, but now there were 2 lights. One faint and orange, my lantern. The other, red, glowing deep inside the tunnel like an open wound. I told myself I'd stay outside, just take a look. But the mountain had other plans.
The deeper I went, the louder the air became. Yes, you heard me right, the air. It was humming, a low, steady vibration, like the mountain itself was breathing through the stone. Then I saw something I'll never forget. The walls of the tunnel weren't made of rock anymore. They were covered in wax, thick, layered wax that pulsed faintly with each sound I made. And embedded in it, like insects in amber, were faces. I recognized some of them. Elias Crane, Leary, the missing boy. Their eyes were open, and they glowed dimly red. The wax dripped down my coat. It burned cold. I stumbled forward, gagging on the smell, part smoke, part rot. My lantern sputtered and died. Only the red light remained. The bleeding lantern hung before me again, brighter than ever. Each drop it shed hit the ground and hissed like steam. Behind it, I saw movement. Dozens of figures, their bodies made of shadow and red glow, working the walls with ghostly tools. Digging, mining, endlessly. "Elias," I whispered,
A head turned toward me. The face was half bone, half wax, but the eyes, they were sharp as life. "We're almost done," he said. "You can help finish the shift." I shook my head. "I'm not one of you." He smiled, or maybe the wax cracked that way. "Then why are you still here?" The lantern flared so bright it turned the air liquid. I covered my face, and for a moment I heard something strange. Not screams, but hammers. Hundreds of hammers striking in rhythm. And beneath that, a pulse, the same one that lived in my chest. Then I saw my reflection in the lantern glass. My skin was covered in soot, my hands black, my eyes glowing red. That's when I realized the truth. The bleeding lantern didn't belong to Elias Crane or the miners. It belonged to anyone who looked too long. It wasn't showing me ghosts. It was showing me a shift still running, powered by the living, and I was part of it. When I woke up, I was lying outside the mine entrance again. The snow around me had melted into a circle. My lantern was gone. In its place was a single old-fashioned miner's lamp, glowing red. I ran until my lungs burned. Didn't stop till sunrise. By the time I reached the nearest town, the soles of my boots were red with something sticky that wasn't mud. I told myself it was wax, but it smelled like blood. Days passed, then weeks. No one believed me, but the light followed. Some nights I'd see it glowing through the fog outside my window, steady, patient. Once a stranger stopped me in town. He said, "You worked the Hollow Brook mine, didn't you?" I asked how he knew. He smiled, thin, cracked lips, and said, "Because you smell like the lantern." He walked away before I could answer. And where he'd stood, the ground was wet and red.
I started having dreams again. This time, I wasn't watching from outside. I was down there, swinging a pick, working the walls beside the others. The sound of dripping wax mixed with the beat of hammers, one endless rhythm. And through it all, that voice again. "We're still digging." Every morning I'd wake up with dirt under my nails. Every night the hum would start again in the distance. Finally, I couldn't take it. I went back one last time, not to run, to understand. It was early spring. The fog was heavier, the air quieter. I brought no lantern, no rope, no tools, only the rosary. As I reached the ridge, the fog turned red, not glowing, bleeding. The droplets that landed on my coat left stains that pulsed like veins. The mine entrance was open. The light inside was blinding, but I walked in anyway. Inside, I saw them again. All 30 miners, standing in a circle, their faces calm, waiting. At the center hung the bleeding lantern, burning without fire. It pulsed once, twice, then stopped dripping. Elias Crane stepped forward, holding something in his hand, a small, cracked rosary. He said, "Yours." We were waiting for it. He hung it on the lantern. The wax hissed, smoked, and turned white. Then the mountain shuddered. The air filled with light so bright it erased the world. When I opened my eyes, I was outside again. The mine was gone. The ridge had collapsed completely, sealed by earth and stone. The fog had cleared, but the red light still glowed faintly in the distance. Not from below, from inside my chest. That was 40 years ago, Jacob. 40 years, and the light never truly went out. You see, I didn't bring the lantern home. It came home. At first, I'd see it in small things. The shine of a kettle lid in morning light. The red glow through closed eyelids before dawn. Even the flame of my oil lamp. Every now and then, it would shift from yellow to crimson for a heartbeat. And whenever it did, I'd hear the faint rhythm of hammers in the distance. One summer evening, I caught a reflection in my mirror. Not me. No. The man staring back wore a miner's coat. His face blackened, his eyes burning faint red. He didn't move when I did. I dropped the mirror. It shattered. The shards on the floor all showed the same reflection. All of them still. The next night, I packed my bag and left for good. I thought maybe distance could drown memory. But grief doesn't care for distance. It's cleverer than that. Years later, after the war, I came across a traveling preacher in a mountain town near Ash Valley. He said he'd been to Hollow Brook, claimed he'd seen the ground still glowing on fog nights. I asked him if the light still bled. He looked at me real slow and said, "No, son, it moved uphill." That's when I knew. The lantern wasn't bound to the mine anymore. It was walking. And like any lost soul, it was looking for a home.
I settled in one last cabin. This very one I sit in now, Jacob. You can hear the old wood creak, can't you? It's built from the timbers they salvaged from Hollow Brook. I didn't know that until the first winter, when the beams started to sweat red after the fire burned low. Not much, just a few drops, like the house remembered the mine's heartbeat. That's when I stopped sleeping. One night I heard footsteps on the porch. Not heavy ones, measured, slow, and then a knock, 3 times. I didn't open it, but light spilled in through the cracks, deep red, soft, pulsing. The air smelled of wax and coal dust. Then the voice came again. "We're almost done, Joseph. One more shift." I told it, "You've had your fill. Leave me be." The voice replied, "We're waiting for the last witness." The light moved along the walls like a living thing, tracing the grain of the wood. It stopped at the table where my father's old helmet still sat. Then the helmet lit up. The inside glowed red, and from it poured a slow trickle of melted wax that slid down the leg of the table and onto the floor. When it hit, the boards smoked. Each drop burned the shape of a boot print. 30 of them. I stood there helpless, watching those red prints move across the floor, one by one, toward the door. When the last one faded, the light went with it. For a long time, nothing, just darkness and the sound of my own heart.
Then I heard something else. A sigh from the chair across from me. I looked, and there he was, Elias Crane, still in his miner's coat, face calm, hands folded. He said, "The lantern doesn't bleed anymore. It burns clean, but it needs a keeper." He pointed to the wall. Hanging there was my old oil lamp. The flame inside had turned red. When it goes out, the mountain forgets again. Then he was gone. The next morning I tried to put out the lamp. Blew till my lungs hurt. It wouldn't budge. The flame didn't flicker. It just stared back. And that's when I understood. The bleeding lantern wasn't a curse. It was memory. Raw, undying memory that needed someone to remember. When men die and time moves on, the land forgets. But stories? Stories are how the earth keeps its heart beating. Every drop of that red wax was a story, a name, a life unfinished. And I had been chosen to remember them. So I did. For 40 years I kept the lamp burning. Even now, as I sit here talking to you, Jacob, it glows on that shelf, soft, warm, red. If it ever goes out, the mountain will sleep again. And when it sleeps, it buries everything, past, present, and what's left of us. So when folks ask me why I still tell stories, I tell them this: because every story keeps a light alive somewhere. And when no one listens anymore, that light starts to bleed.
That was Grandpa Mr. Joseph, reminding us that even the land remembers what we try to forget. Maybe that's what storytelling really is, holding a light that once belonged to someone else. If you could see the look in this studio right now, Night Owls, the lamp beside Grandpa Joseph's chair is glowing red. Not bright, not eerie, just alive. So wherever you are, keep your own light burning tonight. And if you ever find yourself driving through fog near the old mining roads and you see a red lantern swinging slow in the dark, don't follow it. Just listen. It's probably telling a story. That's it for tonight's broadcast of Midnight FM. If you felt the chill, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. New stories drop every midnight. Until then, keep your lamps clean, your windows shut, and your hearts open. Because around here, light remembers. This is R.J. Jacobs signing off. Good midnight and good luck.